Hi, my name is Shaquille Shaniqua Joy. I'm the host of Harman Kardon Inspired by Sound, and today I'm here for a conversation with sound designer, artist, and electronic musician Yuri Suzuki. Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
The last time we were talking, you were sitting, I believe, in your studio. I saw you on the screen, and there were all of these wonderful, big analog synthesizers and all of this equipment. It looked so impressive. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit more how you got into music, what your background is with that, and what I saw on the screen, basically.
Yeah, I think really coming from very personal experience anyway, because my dad is big collector of the music, since I was a child anyway. So I was basically grown up with music. So that's kind of natural transition me to be interested in music. And my position is kind of a little bit strange in a way, like something between music and also design and art, like something in the middle always. So that's actually really came from, in the beginning, I want to be musician, obviously, but I'm dyslexic, cannot read any musical score. So I'm shifting to more design direction in a way. And then after that, quite a lot of projects, like especially public art project, and the relation with sound became quite key for my practice. So that's how constructed my practice, I believe.
Yeah. You already mentioned some of the public work, or artworks that you make for public spaces, and we're definitely going to talk about that as well. But you also mentioned your background in design. How did you get into that field? Like, what made you explore design? I know that you have a background in product design also.
Yeah, I think kind of product design either a bit fading away because I'm more interested in the interaction side. That aspect is more interesting.
Yeah.
So that's shift into that. And also related to musical instrument design as well. As you can see, my equipment always using, it looks crazy in a way, but probably I'm choosing 50% for aesthetic as well, not about sound content.
That's interesting.
So some of this kind of aesthetic balancing with content, that's another key as well, I think.
Wonderful. So eventually you decided to combine your music background also with design and art. Like, what made you want to go in that direction?
I think really everything came naturally in a way because obviously when I studied at Royal College of Art was kind of everyone's kind of genius of product design, but I don't have any product design background at all. Then thinking about what I could do for that. Then always sound and music is my core knowledge in the way. So how I can translate that idea to physical product design format in the way. Then it doesn't really fit to product design at all. Like it became kind of really strange product or like something not useful, but somehow works in the context and narrative way. Then became, I got more contact from gallery or museum rather than commercial companies. So that's transitions in the beginning of music, and it became product design. I was studying, but it wasn't really useful in the product design field. And now field is more art, and kind of gallery context is more, fit into my practice, I believe now. So
and you mentioned the gallery context, but at the same time, a lot of your works are also in public spaces. I mean, obviously, galleries can also be sort of a public space, but just also at airports or somewhere outside. And I was wondering to what extent first of all, what are things that you consider when you design something that you know will be there for a long time and at a place that it is accessible to a lot of people? What are things you think about?
Yeah, I think my personal observation toward to public art became just statue or something, isn't it? It's that it should be feedback to community and what is around in a way, and also should be actively interact with people surrounding, living, or so on. But you can see public art is sometimes golden statue or something. It doesn't really have much function, I feel like. So for me, it's need to have kind of an invitation to more interact with work and not more than aesthetic in a way. So therefore, my work looks like a playground. But at the same time, in a way, my knowledge using more sound playground in a way. So that became sort of key for that. And also another reason using sound is always more strong communication method, rather than reading it, and always consuming much better to the brain as well. So therefore, probably tend to use like sound as key communication method for the like public art project, I think.
Yeah, I think that is really interesting. We were talking about that before as well, about how fascinating it is that your work is so, in a way, scientific and there's so much knowledge behind it that you have, but then it's also so playful and fun to look at. Even children like can interact with it. And there's this interactive aspect that you said that I find so important also because it is at a public space and it's exactly what you said. We see these statues and it's like, what is that for me? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the point actually, because like for example, like my daughter, she's 3 years old now, and kind of she's trained from her mom about art. Then like she's tried to not touching it in the way, so she's a bit scared to touching art and so on. But in the public art context, it should be stay for like forever, like a long time, and I think it should be used by anyone in the way. But if it's kind of golden or like some bronze looks expensive, people a bit scared to touch and so on. So therefore, like my work is always tended to be looks fun looking, and also primary color as well, like red, blue, and yellow kind of color, because that's actually fundamental color to accessible for anyone as well. So that's actually like a reason why like my work looks kind of tended to be playful in the way and catchy.
Yeah, really nice. And then I'm also wondering, because it takes place in different countries, so you have work that is all over the world. You just said something about San Francisco. I saw that there's works Singapore, all like in London as well. What are things that you maybe change, or like what does your process look like to create something for different environments in different countries? Like, can you tell me a little bit more about?
Absolutely, yeah. So for example, when I did project for San Francisco MoMA, this new piece called Arborism. That was quite a long process. Like we spent 2 years for researching that and what bespoke piece for that project. So starting from, first of all, kind of a history context and what kind of surroundings in a way. So location for that piece is actually like a tend to people not to go like quite empty place. Like and also, if you go to San Francisco, center of San Francisco, a bit empty now after pandemic, and kind of bit. To be honest, a bit scary to walking around because kind of a little bit dead town in a way. But I think kind of an invitation to people to coming back. So that's one function of that piece. And also we have quite a lot of field recording collection from that area or San Francisco itself, like not only like urban sound, it's more about nature sound and the wave sound, sea lion. So we have checked into like all sound together and try to make kind of soothing environment, and also that the installation have sort of like kind of seating areas where people sitting down, hanging out, that space, people can eat food in there, that's no problem as well.
And it's outside?
Yeah, outside as well. So it's just outside of the museum, but that space is quite concrete and not so much people accessing it. But because of inviting like a quite bright color in there, people tend to going up and look on the piece these days. And also color as well. So what color works out in the environment. And we picked up color inspired from San Francisco nature soundscape. And for example, color of the kind of green and kind of yellow, and also Golden Gate Bridge, that kind of orangish red kind
Rusty,
of color as well. So that's one thing we do. But in general, to answer your question, for working for like many different countries, like kind of US, kind of UK, European region, Asian country. But fundamentally, like, sort of like keyword for playing in a way, like just really primitive presence of the enjoyment with the piece, kind of interactive piece. Doesn't really change much for because human beings sharing, no cultural difference, no like language difference or gender or like race or anything. People fundamentally, children or child experience actually accessing to anyone in a way. So there's not major consideration for difference for like each countries. But of course, color and sound is totally different culture, but interaction is always kind of sharing same ground, I
And
think.
could you also share a little bit more about the sound and how, like, for this specific piece, maybe in San Francisco, like, what is the sound that people can hear? I would love to know more.
Yeah, so we did quite a long time for field recording. I think we have got appointed 2 different field recording artists, and also I recorded myself in the way, just kind of iconic sound, people realizing any iconic sound to realize in San Francisco in the way. So we probably collected like over 300 or 400 sound, and a bit of sound, also landscape sound and everything.
Yeah.
And that piece actually kind of functioned to how that's called, more like relaxing or soothing effect. That's kind of aim for the project.
Calm people down.
Yeah. So, and always I'm using kind of, I hate using the word AI, but you know, kind of we are using algorithm and kind of teaching into that kind of pattern of like 300 to 400 different sound pattern and finding similarity and also mission to creating soothing sounds. That's basically I try to do from that project. So, so another aspect, actually, I'm using a lot of AI and like algorithm-based project.
So basically the artwork is collecting a lot of sounds and things that you hear in the area of San Francisco, and then it's AI generated into what we, in the end, hear from the artwork?
Yeah, so basically kind of AI is kind of standing as curator in the way, like how they're selecting sound based on the time and the mission to make basically soothing sound and relaxing people in the way. But some sound is quite aggressive. In the beginning was this so much banging sound, for example, like sound from, you know, some pottery, like factory or
in
like
the
some,
city also.
city's noise. But for time being, like less and less aggressive sound in a way, because kind of mission to making more soothing sound. So it's quite interesting, like because it's totally out of my control for selecting sound.
Yeah.
And we see like and how, you know, that algorithm to be changed.
I think it's interesting that you brought up the thing about soothing sound and like something that calms you down, because in preparation for this, I also looked up, I think it's called Sound of the Earth, Chapter 3, which is an artwork of yours that is both physical but also in the digital space. And I went to the website where you can listen to the sounds that you collected from, or that people can just submit, right? And it was so calming. I just sat there for like an hour or so, just listening to it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there's also sounds that aren't as calming, but what I've heard was like, wow. It made me wonder if you, because from what I understand also, it's a bit about creating common ground also. If you notice differences in how people experience sound or look at sound in different places of the world, especially with an artwork like that?
I think in general, you know, any human being has a common ground how to consuming sound in the way, but context for listening sound is totally different, I believe, I think. Because I did one project in like New Delhi or Old Delhi, like in India, like a while ago. That's absolutely like a noisy environment. That's actually, I couldn't even standing on the street anymore because that's, you know, basically people shouting and banging things and honking car, that's constantly happening. So I think kind of way to consuming sounds totally different in each country in a way. But in terms of soothing, like people probably has got sort of common ground what kind of sound is soothing in a way, because obviously not sharp sound, it's more mild sound, and so background quite close to like a nature sound in the way, like such as like, you know, leaf wind, like, you know, have a friction of the leaves and also wave sound and so on. That's like, you know, naturally calm down people anyway.
These things that we all know, basically, that, are like...
And also interesting factor is like this particular noise called white noise, like quite similar to like a leaf friction sound, also wave sound, that actually really similar sound and being in the kind of mother's body in a way, because when like a fetus, like a listening sound when inside of the mother, like a listening sound of the kind of like a distribution of the sort of blood inside here, and that distribution of blood sounds quite similar to white noise, like kind of sound. So I think human being like kind of listening that kind of sound, it became more calm down in a way. So
do you notice yourself being, because of what you just described when being in India, do you notice that you're now very hyper aware of sound because of your work, that you're like always like noticing all the noise and the sound around you in a different way than maybe other people do?
I do think like I'm more like noticing, and also more, critical in the way that it's not. I think it's not great. But for example, I'm always talking about bus sound design example in London, for example, because they're relative new train line called Dockland Rail Service, and has got really aggressive notification sound, which never changed for like past 20 years. So that's quite surprising, like people accepting that kind of bus sound.
Yeah.
And also, I think, and also like I have to add, like since we experienced pandemic in the way, like I think since then, like more people realizing importance of what people consuming as a sound, I think. So that's major changes happened this 5 years, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. And I also, something that I find quite interesting about your work is that I think a lot of artists, like they explore a medium and then they really flourish in that. And that often is either like towards more analog or more digital, but you combine the both of them so well, and even like sometimes one in the same artwork. Why is that something that is interesting to you, like to do?
I think kind of both aspects kind of merge together, working more like better impact in terms of communication and the sensory experience as well, because digital tends to be like not much kind of physicality in there, but human being like need to have physicality to manipulating, for example. And probably I can talk a bit about another piece I created called Ambient Machine. Actually, it's functionality you can do from online or iPad. Like you can do mixture of the sound, quite easy things to do in the digitally. But this just looks like complicated forms, like kind of a lot of switches and so on. But people really like enjoying kind of a tangible experience in the way. So always kind of combination with physicality is quite key for any project, I feel like.
Is it the one that is standing right there?
Yeah, sitting there,
Amazing. Oh, that's so nice. I also saw an interview of you in which you said something about, and I thought it was interesting that you mentioned your daughter, because you said that if children are excited about a project, then you know that after work is engaging and exciting.
Yeah, I think because I'm quite primitive person as well, and I'm quite childish in the sense.
Childlike.
So I'm dyslexic as well. So if it's kind of if I go to artwork, something too much caption, I can't really read and immediately bored, walk away, kind of most impatient person I am anyway. So always kind of myself is quite a good example, because he's worst guy, like he's impatient, never enjoys things, but how I can please from creation is myself in a way. And also of course my daughter as well. I think she's very demanding, and also she's really switching her mind quickly, but how like longer engagement I can have with her, that's
patience.
Also another, patience. Or like attraction in a way, so that's also quite important as well.
And what does your research process usually look like for like, do you get more approached, or is it like, do you have ideas and you approach people and you're like, oh, I really have this subject that I want to investigate in more, like?
I think it's really important to do is quite experiment, and prototyping is just really important, I feel like. But I admit to say that because I don't have much opportunity to doing it these days, because the kind of artwork became bigger and bigger, so I can't really produce myself anymore. So I always leave it to the factory to make it. So I wish to do more prototyping, experiment. That's something I want to do more. But through the making it, discover something, and also, but of course, kind of a concept making is more important as well, because contextualizing work is really difficult actually. So that's always struggling.
What is difficult about it?
Just kind of think about like why like this installation or artwork fit to the environment, what's meaning behind, because we cannot really just presenting just something, just one having thing. That's not really like, need to have meaning behind that. Context and narrative have to be surrounding in the way. So that part is really difficult for me, like kind of beginning of the hook of the relation for the area and also place to install. That's so hard to find out. Like also teamwork as well. Like I used to have a company, have 5 people in my studio, like kind of, developing an idea and the prototype and administration and so on. Then I left that, closed down that company and I joined for another company for Pentagram, also have a team member as well. And I recently left that company too, so it became myself now. So I don't have much opportunity to discussion to people these days. But now I'm sometimes kind of chatting with, chat GPT or something.
Really?
So like just self like conversation with chat GPT for like, some idea information and so on. So
interesting.
I'm not sure it's really good way to use or not, but because I'm, practically I'm myself now, so that's why I need to have someone company to talk about it.
You never reach out to other artists or other people, maybe ex-colleagues or something like that?
Yeah, hopefully I can reach for that, but everyone's busy, so I can't.
That's true.
I don't want to bother people anyway.
I
But I think at the moment, ChatGPT is sort of working to inspire me a little bit as well. But of course, I'm a bit critical about kind of AI usage too. But I think quite useful tools, I think.
But it's interesting. It's an interesting way to like also just to explore and see what it does for you, right? It doesn't mean that you have to go further with it. But that's an interesting approach because you just mentioned that you used to be also part of Pentagram. And I assume that there you had a lot of people like to also bounce ideas with and stuff like that. Okay.
So I think nice to have always conversation and coming up new ideas sometimes. So it's always teamwork as well.
We spoke a little bit about the interactive part of your works, but I wonder if you could explain it a little bit for people that maybe never saw one in real life. Like, how does it work, and how are people engaged to interact with your works?
So one kind of aspect for one passage for my public art is really about acoustic playground in a way, like you can actually talk into one direction and you can reach to your voice to other parts. That's kind of long distance talk without electric wire. It's quite, quite amazing.
Hello, everyone.
So people really enjoying like kind of how their voice distribute as a part kind of way. And also more listening experience as well. Like you can hear surrounding sounds through the kind of pipes and stuff to get to know about what's happening around. So that's one way people quite enjoying in a way. And another way is more about sort of relaxing and soothing experience. Like it's a very background sound and giving people for comfort in a way. So people just sitting down and kind of closing their eyes sometimes as well. And I've seen some extreme examples, people be crying as well, like a little bit too much for me. But I think
that would be me, I think, actually. Because
that's kind of wow.
Really?
That's
no, but like, sometimes when you...
Big reaction in a way,
But when you feel like a lot of emotions or you feel very like calm all of a sudden, you can like hear all the peace. Or even, I sometimes cry when I'm inspired also. So I think, I think that's a compliment.
Probably a compliment. I was quite shocked in a way. Wow, like people crying it. Like that's what quite shocked once. But I think that's generally people interact with work in a way. And also I tend to put quite a lot of, like sort of functional public furniture function as well. Like people can sit down and so people actually can climbing up. That's
I saw that people can like stand on it and then speak into something also.
But not San Francisco one piece, but I think other pieces actually kind of people are allowed to climbing up sometimes as well. Yeah.
Super interesting. So you mentioned that some of your projects include AI also, but you also said that you don't really like the word. So maybe you can share more about what you think of it and when you decide to include it and when maybe not?
Yeah. So I think through the process, because I'm kind of person again, like I don't like sort of, keyword technology, like kind of always virtual reality, augmented reality kind of things. Like I'm just not really jump on that kind of topic at all. But through the kind of process to realizing like my idea, realizing AI is super useful in a way. So that's why I started using it since 6-7 years ago already. Anyway, then I think quite positive in the way like how we're using it. But AI always technology have to supporting it rather than dominated by center of the practice in a way. So always your idea first in a way, like you have one idea is kind of how we can make soothing sound from out of 300 to 400 sound, and a human being cannot do it in the way, then AI can do it. So then kind of quite useful usage for that. And another task, for example, based on the composition, for example, I make 1 minute composition, but some organization or client want to have stretch into 1 hour or 2 hour infinity amount of music from that 1 minute piece. That again, human being cannot do, but AI able to do it as well. So quite useful as well. So it's just have to use for other tools, I think. But just like I'm not comfortable AI became center for everything in a way. And then recently I made one release about cassette tape release about all AI generated, basically acid house like mixtape. I'm typing myself and kind of every day I probably spend 2 or 3 hours in the evening about kind of generating music in a way, just compile it and kind of made that release anyway. But which is interesting in a way, like can see transition like a less sophisticated sound to really sophisticated sound now, and it became okay. This actually I'm not surprised if FX Twin created that kind of quality now. So I think that's a bit scary for me, but I think from now on, like many musicians or creators, it should be much more like a niche environment rather than kind of wider covered kind of things. For example, music-wise, kind of not about general music, more like kind of niche or kind of visual music. It's more important than before in the way because AI can covering it.
So you use it more to enhance than actually like for it to take over.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You just mentioned like that you sometimes sit there for 2 to 3 hours on your cassettes, and I was wondering if you could share a bit more about, as you are also an electronic musician, about your music making process and like.
Yeah, so I think really coming from like my disability in the way, like dyslexic, is really has been quite difficult running music in a way, first of all musical score and running for music theory in the way. And the music theory is really like mathematics in a way, and that's something I never understand in a way. So kind of I nearly gave up to doing music at one point. Then I discovered electronic music field, like more of using synthesizer and the drum machine and so on, and which kind of opened up quite a lot for free way to making music. And my kind of process for composing music is very like orientated with machine itself actually. So I think my way to making is not standard music theory at all, kind of ambiguous way than making music.
It sounds really interesting, and I'm also like a little bit sad that I couldn't like enter your, like that we can't come to your studio right now, and like that I can see everything. And I saw an interview where you also said something about the fact that nowadays even noise is categorized as music. In a way, so it's like such a broad spectrum, and it's really interesting to see like how you cover all of these different fields. But I think there's a lot of like common ground in the way that you work in a way, because you're just really curious and like you want to explore and work with different machines and technologies to just see what you can give and what you get back, if I get it right.
Yeah. I think really interesting process is coming to ambient music kind of progression in the history, I think, because in the beginning was very about kind of atmospheric music piece, then basically Brian Eno was kind of creating more about definition of the ambient music and the feeling and fit in the atmosphere. Then kind of something 90s quite revolutionary, some German musicians kind of very minimalistic approach for the sound, which is actually basically kind of glitch of the electric noise became music in a way. That's quite, like a big change in the music history, I feel like. So then now pretty much anything in the environment could be used as a musical instrument now. So that's really, interesting now. And also music too is really sophisticated now. So anyone could make music these days. Yes.
Yeah, and you also collaborate with musicians, right? You have collaborated in the past.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And that's always, again, like quite similar to previous conversation, like teamwork in a way, like probably myself is not really super advanced thinking for music. I tend to be a bit conservative for my music, I feel like, but sometimes people have a bit more crazy idea and coming up, then like kind of amazing composition coming up in there. So it's really, collaboration is really like key for making nice music as well.
I think this is a really exciting time also for you, and I'm really looking forward to see all the things that are coming from this phase that you're in right now. I want to thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Thank you.
Yes.